welcome to this session. I'm Graham McGuinness from Route 6, and this is a subject that's kind of very close to my heart. I sort of look after pre- and post-sales integration at Route 6, and very much deeply involved with workflow design. And for all of us here in this room, workflow and workflow implementation is something that touches us on a kind of a pretty much a daily basis. The session, in terms of PAM and MAM, be prepared to be sort of immersed in sort of acronym hell, really. PAM for production asset management, MAM for media asset management, DAM for digital asset management. You know, it kind of goes on and on. But really what we hope will emerge during the session is some kind of insights into each of these sort of worlds, if you like, and clearly with us, and as hopefully we will demonstrate, a sort of a growing sort of a blurring between these so-called systems. Traditionally, PAM, production asset management, was really systems that evolved and grew around production's need for intelligence and integration in their day-to-day production environments. So, you know, automatically ingesting material and making it available for the editing staff while it is being ingested, automatically checking material into a system and allowing editors sort of browse, access, and sort of instant sort of editorial access to that material. Traditionally, though, MAMs and the MAM sort of world has been slightly sort of farther reaching, in the sense that it is typically, and I say typically, encompassed business processes on top of production processes, monetization of digital sort of libraries and so forth. But as you'll see, the lines between sort of PAM and MAM are getting sort of less distinct. And it's interesting today, where we're showcasing solutions from two vendors, Kevin McDuggan from CatDV and Noel from Front Porch. It's interesting to note that with these two vendors who are effectively tackling sort of especially or disparate sort of issues or problems, that they were both involved in the same system integration over at NASCAR in the US, which is a pretty significant sort of job. And I guess it's pretty indicative of how these sort of worlds and sort of issues are sort of coming together. So without sort of further ado, I'd like to introduce Kevin McDuggan from CatDV, and he'll take us through the first part of the session.
My best. So the reason I'm showing you the actual database from NASCAR. NASCAR was a greenfield site which we started, I think, about 5 years ago, and we replaced a MAM, which was called Video Bank. And the reason we replaced it is because we were more of a PAM, the production bit. Now, what I'm showing you here is some of the archive. Now, this is a very good example of where they make their money from selling footage. So archive, and a lot of the stuff is streamed from the track. There's a lot of now P2 and Red and all the rest of it into the mix, and archive comes into there. But they made an intelligent decision. They said, we archive everything. And the guy there, Scott, has a nice phrase for it. He says, let history be my judge. We archive the lot. He spins it that way, but the truth is, no one could come up with the right criteria to decide what to keep and what to throw away. So the only way of making sure you didn't throw anything away you didn't want to throw away is to archive the lot. Now, we saved on storage there because we are tracking at the minute, I think, about 5.5 petabytes of, wait for it, proxy. 5.5 petabytes of proxy. It's not the HD, because we also transcode everything as a RAW, and I think we've got 100 Mac Minis doing the shows. 100 Mac Minis, and then we conform it. And the conform fits into the Front Porch way, because when we first started to work out this workflow, we had to take the XML, which is coming out of Final Cut or CatDV, and use that to restore. So we're pointing at different media, but we have to point back to the high res, because we conform the timeline. And it comes back, the numbers I used to have, it was coming back off the Front Porch about 330 megabytes per second. So you took the timeline in Final Cut, this is all Final Cut, and you would reconform that from the archive, and the timeline would come up. And there's sort of technical issues in it, in that they were doing partial restore as well, which was another significant part of the front porch thing. Though, because they were bringing down long streams. So if you're bringing down a 4-hour stream or an 8-hour stream, partial restore seemed to be a good idea, because you're just bringing back the bits of the file. Typically, people would have to restore the whole of the file and take the bits they wanted. But as clip-based has come in, I sort of now say clip-based, the overhead of bringing back a small 10-second clip is not worth the hassle of partial restore. So the workflows sort of evolved over time. What I wasn't aware of at the time, but was soon made aware of, is there's actually a war going on, basically, between the requirements of archive and the requirements of production asset management. So the way I sort of quickly sort of sum it up now, PAMs are all about hurry up. Quick, get it in, let's get it out, get show to air. Archive is a much more considered process. It's looking for the 2-year, the 5-year, the 10-year, the 20-year view. Now, the way it works in NASCAR, we have, I think these days, 50 teams of loggers. And the loggers have to be trained, because the criteria where we're using are both technical, and a lot of CatDV can pick up this information from the files themselves and fill it out, and much more subjective. These are the sort of criteria we use. We have every driver that's ever got in a NASCAR going back. So these are a schema that we're applying to the footage. The archive logging, the people go through it. Notice this is the real deal. This is what they're doing. Low angle, medium shot, zoom in, zoom out, practice watching, hauler. This is all keystrokes. This is archive logging. It's for the young man here, you know, where we're talking about what's the difference between PAMs and MAMs. MAMs are typically take a lot of keystroke and a lot of work. The loggers have to be trained because we want them all to be on the same page. Why do we want them to be on the same page? Because when we're retrieving this in 10 years' time, the people who logged it aren't here. The people who shot it aren't here. There's no, the memory of the organization is in your database. So the first thing I do when I sort of look to workflows, if you haven't got a MAM or a PAM, you're using folder structure. There's no other way to do it. If you've got shared storage, you have folders and they're all named, and there's a hierarchy of folders which you have to teach everybody. And when you get a new guy comes in, you have to show him where stuff is on the SAN and have it. It's the only way it works successfully. Now what I try to do is model that structure in the software. So there isn't a cultural change. People still in their heads have a map of the topography of the SAN. But when you get a MAM or a PAM, computers are good at tracking stuff. They don't, even though it's in a folder, they don't have to know that. They can pull stuff from disparate places. If you log against a good schema, you can pull stuff from all kinds of storage. We're tracking this lot. We've got everything there. We've got old storage, pillar storage, we've got DDN, active storage, you name it, they've got it, and they don't throw it away. They just repurpose it. Going to proxy meant they didn't need the fastest and latest and greatest. They only need the fastest stuff to do the conforms to the online. Yeah. So CatDV can track. These are all the media file paths to all the storage across this huge place. You know, you go down. It's half a mile away from all the switches and the servers. You go up into the editing suites. You can't reboot it because the Macs are half a mile away, which has caused problems, but it all seemed good at the time. So what was the tension we were finding? We were finding that production asset management is the ability to change everything very quickly. So I'm now tagging all these clips, and they will all now have that attribute. Because what we're getting when we go to clip-based, this is a new driver, instead of one file, one tape, 1 hour, We may have 100 clips for 1 hour of media. Therefore, the asset management problem is now an order of magnitude of 100 times bigger than we were used to when we were tape-based. A lot of more stuff is coming as file-based or clip-based, and the workflow we had 5 years ago is changing. Building for media were in the mix here, and at the time they didn't do proxies and various other things, so we said we'll do that for you, but then they started doing it. But what they've not been able to handle is the file-based stuff, the P2, the RED, XD Cam, and these little GoPros and things that they're strapping in. What I didn't mention is they have cameras in every car as well. When you see a NASCAR thing, they've got cameras in every car. Tracking all that against, we track all that against time of day, and so we can bring it all back with different time code offsets and various other things. We can harmonize it, so you can search on time code and you can see 30 cameras and get a view of what's happening at a certain time. So this is production asset management, which they find valuable because they'll tag something as a crash. Once you've got a time code, you can bring up every instance of that crash. So editorially, I'm looking for the best coverage. So we can go to the database and we can go, okay, if we get very clever, we can go to advanced things and we can say, show me everything within so many seconds of that. Once you've got a decent time code and you tie it to a date, you can show up every instance of that crash because that gives you the context. So this is a production asset management type workflow. We also do rough cut workflow, rough cut editing and stuff like that. But the big thing, or the tension, came from NASCAR makes it their money by selling footage. They have a very, very large archive which they monetize. Now, a lot of places I go, they say, we have all these tapes, we want to turn them into noughts and ones, and we do want an archive, but they have no idea of the value of that archive going forward. They know how much it costs to shoot, typically hundreds of thousands, millions, hotel bills, cameraman's fees, their bar bills, blah, blah, blah. They know how much they cost to shoot, but they have no real view on how much it's worth, on how much time it's going to save them. If they did have a monetary value to it, they could make intelligent decisions like, how much money should we put into archive? Yeah? And they don't really, they haven't figured that out. And sometimes I go into the boardroom and it usually comes down from the boardroom because it comes from on high, thou shalt archive. Because production people don't want anything that gets in the workflow. Anything that's deemed to be slowing stuff down. And the sort of production people, we were brought in by the archive people. The production people deemed us to be slowing stuff down. We weren't in actuality, but what that happened is they'd gone from everybody digitizing their own stuff to centralizing ingest and using the loggers to log for both production requirements and archive. So we split up the workflows. We had production stuff coming in, which was very quickly tagged, you know, kaboom, global tagging, because we needed those attributes in the database to do the restore and the conform. So we needed that to go through logging, but they were very, very quick. Typically they would be doing it in seconds, minutes. But because they'd centralized ingest, so it would go to the loggers, instead of them digitizing their own stuff, they had to go in a hole in the wall. And they had to go, here's my stuff, could you please digitize it? And that was deemed to be a queue. So you got a few producers, and they wouldn't bring it in when they had it. They would bring it in typically Monday morning at 9 o'clock. And there'd be a little queue of production people saying, here's my tapes, here's my tapes. They deemed that to be slowing everything down. They didn't require it that, and everyone in production is special. My stuff is much more special than your stuff. Yeah, I must have my stuff first. Am I making this up? You know, this is the way it works. I must have it. I'm the most important people. And we've got 100 odd of them. And they're predator editors, therefore they're much more important than anybody else you've ever seen in your life, because they're both producers and editors, right?
What about those?
Yeah, and you know, they haven't quite got the idea that you're not actually a producer, because you wouldn't be editing if you were a producer. You know? Yeah, that's the way it sort of works. So they deemed we were slowing stuff down, but it was centralizing ingest so we could regularize this stuff. If we can get this stuff, we can only automate when we have good information. If we have crap, we can't automate. If stuff is put in the wrong place on the SAN, we can't automate because it's not there. So we just deemed it the right way was to centralize ingest. I'm seeing opposite tendencies at the minute. So, blah, blah, blah. So for producers, we didn't even need it. This is typical producer. He's logged it. That's it. That's all you'll get from them. That isn't good for archive. That isn't good for the 20-year view. But if you look at the archive logging, I inherited all this. They log it on these things: high fives, huddles, put some steering wheel, roll in, roll by. These were how they think of in NASCAR culturally, how they look for stuff. There's commercial reasons why they need to log it at this level of detail, because you'll get someone come in and there'll be a hood sponsor. We have lots of them. These are the guys who are paying. So Monday morning, I mean, NASCAR runs, if you've been in New York, you'll see it runs from sort of 12 o'clock to about 6 o'clock, Saturday and Sunday on a channel. It's a huge, huge thing. And the sponsors will come in and say, how many minutes of coverage did I get over the weekend? So this requires manual logging, because we don't have image recognition or anything that can say hood sponsor car. I mean, the cars are plastered with stuff. But the logger's been taught and trained, and they log it, and we can come back and say, you got 2 minutes. You got 2 minutes of footage. We can stitch it together as a little show reel for them and send it out, because we can search from the database. But the dirty secret of all this stuff is it's keystrokes. There's no other way, you know. And anyone tells you different, you know, they keep saying to me, I work with Nexidia, which is audio pattern recognition. When the text tags run out, that's a good idea. I've had some image recognition stuff for 4 or 5 years, which we used on a natural history thing, and you could say, this is a cat, this is a lion, this is a cheetah, but then you have to teach it. You have to teach it, this is a cat from behind, this is a cat from the side, this is George Bush wearing a hat. And it was taking too long. And you would get what I call false positives. You get this with Nexidia, and you get it with all these. You can bet your bottom dollar if you put a producer on it, the first 5 things he clicks will be inaccurate. Therefore, forget it. This is the whole thing about production asset management. If you don't get what you want straight away, I'll be profane, it's shit. That's what they say. They just say, forget it. It's not working. Text works. But the dirty secret is you need trained people to put it in, and it takes time. If you're serious about archive, you need to do it in some ways. We've done some things with, she got locked up? Martha Stewart. Yeah, she got locked up, and then she came back. She had 20 years of archive, right? So we turn it into noughts and ones up in New Jersey. But we have a web client. We make quick times, put proxies on the web, housewives come in, log it. It's a cheaper way of doing it, and everyone wants cheap. We also track who they are, because you want to know who the good loggers are and who the bad loggers, because that has to be a sort of gestalt memory, because the organization needs to know how it thinks of things. So in the NASCAR world, we have all this personalities, race flag, comments, vast amounts. Scott, who did this thing, showed me 5 years ago, he showed me something he'd written 12 years ago, and basically it said, not invented yet, not invented yet, not invented yet. And he says you need 120 fields in addition to the technical metadata to find stuff going forwards. I slightly disagree. Seems too many to me. It seems too complicated, but I inherited this, and he knows his stuff. They make money out of this, and they're very profitable. So it just seems extreme, but I don't disagree with him. I'm just giving you his wisdom, if you like. But it is important to understand in 2 years' time, in a big organisation, no one knows nothing. They didn't shoot it, they didn't edit it, they didn't direct it. So you have to think of this common schema. That's really the work. And people start off and say, oh, I only need 5 fields. Well, that's too few. Maybe 120 is too many, because it's not just 120 fields, it's all this stuff as well. But we can search the database and say, give me a blimp shot or an aerial of Daytona 2000 with a crash. We can do that in the database. What's it doing? It's asking me something. Because it's been logged at this level of detail. But they've got 50 guys now, and they sell archive and logging as a service, because if you have spare capacity, because we've got the big room full of stuff. And they go to lots of universities and they say, give me your rusty tapes. They've got the VTRs, which is another big thing these days if you're thinking of archive. Having the old guys who know how to fix the VTRs, change the capacitors, that's a good idea, and have good serviceable decks. That's getting more important. They have these guys, so they can turn it into noughts and ones, and typically they're giving them LTO5s back, and they give them a CatDV catalog and usually proxies, because we generate the proxies as well. So they sell it as a service, and they use the loggers as part of the, they're trained, so they're quick at it, and they do it as service, which is basically because you got spare capacity on the LTO side. So I'm losing my thread a little bit. So, PAM and MAM. Hurry up, quick. Archive, slow. I've detected a new trend, which is sort of counter to the argument. But I had a conversation here a year ago with a guy I didn't know, but he turned out to be a guy responsible for BBC Sports and the Olympics, a guy called Chris Groom, up at Manchester, which is a greenfield site. They've got 50 seats of Final Cut. They are turning out the Olympics. It's both versioning hell, because we're producing stuff for the phone, producing stuff for the web, we're doing it for news, we're doing it for everything you can think of the BBC does. It's multi-platform, they're doing for the Olympics. So we came up with a new product. This is BBC News, because they've taken it up as well, and it's production asset management. What goes wrong in the real world? They don't name stuff properly. They don't put it in the right place. They can't find it. You get the Olympics, we've got about 250 freelancers coming in through the door. We can give them 5 minutes of orientation to one of the most complex sounds you've ever seen in your life. So that's going to work. And I can show you I think I've got it somewhere here. I've got a 60-page document somewhere that tells me how they should do it. This is what was given to me as a spec. And we ended up with Focal Point. And basically, this is for the news, but we can say we tag stuff. Same idea, boom. If I asked an editor to fill in a form, go away. He would talk to me very strictly. If I can spoof him into giving me tags, and these tags are inherited by the output, the movies, the .mobs, we have tags on the actual file names. This is a very simple mechanism for computers to deal with. It's not full-blown asset management, it's production asset management. So we go blah, 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 and this is the scary bit. We ask for user input. This is where it goes wrong. And people are saying, can we get rid of this bit? And we call it the item, so it could be, I don't know, Route 6, just an item name. If they put in an illegal character, remember the mobs are going to inherit this, and they're on the Wreath network up there, which is every platform on the planet. It won't move sometimes across different file systems. So we trap all the illegal characters. We're on Omnium up there, which is a very old file system. So we have lots of things. And we take all these things and we turn them into acronyms. BBC is acronym hell. Has acronyms for everything. If you've been there long enough, you can just talk in TLAs. I'm going on today.
Yeah.
Okay, how long? 5?
3.
3, okay. I've got 3. I'll just give you the one thing I tell when I teach this stuff. What people forget about assets management overall, it depends on three things. It depends on the people, the process, and the software. If the people don't understand the process, they won't follow it. If it's too complicated, they won't follow it. If these two steps don't work, the software won't work. You need to get all three right. And that's really, you know, if I'm summing up, that's where production asset management and MAMs actually meet. It's getting the people on side and understanding why you're doing it. If archive is a really big part of their job, maybe you've got to get the editors to add a little bit more up front if you don't have loggers, because it's useful information to the corporation, to the entity when they're not there. If you can split it up because it's hurry up, and you can bring in loggers for the archive, that's a good approach too. But we're all at the infancy of all this stuff. We're looking for more ways of automating, but it's still very subjective what you get out of the archive stuff. Production asset management, we typically, you know, 1 tag, 2 tags, get on with it, and they don't care because it's getting it out the door. So split up the workflow.